Most humble greetings and salutations of peace. I am Ital Iman. The invisible thread that binds all things from atoms to stars, you may call it God. It is it that dwells within you as you. It dwells within me as me. The Rastafari know it and say one love. I and I call it one love. We say I and I because we know that we are the all. We express it with divine intent. Expressing it as being within us all makes us one, and there is no separation in that oneness. Creation is constant movement. We express creation as iration because, like the fungi, we are connected to the trees at our roots. It is one air we breathe, one sun touching us all, one moon that inspires us all. Our freedom is hidden in unity. The example was given eons ago by the pyramid builders who had one aim, one destiny, a message in mathematical code, a GPS system built in stone to bring us home, to show us the way to freedom. There was no you and I in the grand blueprint. It was we. The I that dwells within the I was the force itself, it that binds us all, the invisible thread called Akibeka, the oath of power, the covenant that is hidden within the ark is binding on the pyramid builders. All we are to do is call upon them and they will honor. I have made clear to you who and what is it you call God. Contrary to popular belief, liberation is a group effort, not individual. Even creation itself was plural, and liberation is creation. The only thing that is singular is personal development. Time is a great factor to this equation. In this comprehensive chart of time known as Black Rebel, i.e. liberation, we start at the mid-20th century, the 1930s through the 1960s, the emergence of Nation of Islam and the Rastafari movement. 311 years after the first 20 Africans were brought to these shores, creating the illusionary slave trade. In the 1930s, black people began to wake up as a collective. Though throughout those 311 years before, individuals were standing around 1854, there were black politicians. In the 1920s, there was Black Wall Street. All during the 20th century, there was unrest and natural creation of the Black Power movement, counteract by the Civil Rights movement, created by the United States government. Perfect example was the 1909 movement called NAACP. The first puppets were W.E.B. Du Bois, Mary White Ovington, Moorfield Story, and Ida B. Wells. The budget of the NAACP in 2019 was at $24,800,000. In 1909, Henry Moskowitz joined W.E. Du Bois and other civil rights leaders to found the NAACP. Kivy Kaplan, a vice chairman of the Union of American Hebrew Congregations, now the Union of Reformed Judaism, served as the national president of the NAACP. From 1966 to 1975, Arnie Aronson worked with A. Philip Randolph and Roy Wilkins to found the Leadership Conference. American Jews played a significant role in the founding and funding of some of the most important civil rights organizations, including NAACP, the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, known as SNCC, SNCC. So we see the Jewish powers being the orchestrators of the civil rights puppets. Martin Luther King was the climax of that movement. You are now in tune. The more radical groups of the 1960s were infiltrated. The FBI began COINTELPRO, short for Counterintelligence Program, in 1956, said to disrupt the activities of the Communist Party of the United States. Therefore, all the black power or nationalists were infiltrated by the counterintelligence operatives. Even Martin Luther King was considered communist. All the black power movement leaders of the 1960s took communism as their role model. They read the Little Red Book of Mao Zedong. Anas Lukman, the great black assassin, set up a meeting with Chairman Mao with Malcolm X. The Rastafari movement was the only movement not financed and controlled by counterintelligence until after the death of Bob Marley in the year 1981. But by that time, the message had reached another level. You are now in tune. We escaped the control, like the Dogon priests, by the order of the Pharaoh of Egypt at the time of the Roman invasion, left with the message of the sacred star system. You are now in tune. Roman rule in Egypt, including Byzantine, lasted from 30 BC to 641 AD, with a brief interlude of control by the Sasanian Empire between 1619 and 629, known as Sasanian Egypt, who ruled Egypt in the 15th century. The Ayyubids were overthrown by their bodyguards, known as the Mamluks, in 1252. The Mamluks ruled under the suzerainty of caliphs of Cairo until 1517, when Egypt became part of the Ottoman Empire. You are now in tune. The Dogon, or sacred Egyptians, has been active since the 2nd century BC and 6th century AD. Dogon did not just start in Mali, West Africa in the 15th or 16th century. It was in the 14th century, the year 1427, that the priesthood began to reveal the ancient wisdom of Egypt through the rituals known as Sigi ceremony. It was another 503 years in the year 1930s, i.e. in the 1930s, the Western world learned of this sacred rite. Like the Nation of Islam and Rastafari movement came in the 1930s, so did the wisdom of the Dogon reach the Western world around the same time. In this we find the keys of our redemption, as written in the Holy Book of Wonder and throughout the teachings of Ital Iman. You are now in tune on the one, the force itself at this time. We call it the Holy Master Blaster Jamin. Ogotamili was blind since his youth as a result of his gun accidentally exploding in his face during a hunting expedition. That incident occurred as he was about to fire at a porcupine. Despite the painful accident and his disabilities, Ogotamili attributed it to fate. As a diviner, elder, and hogan, Ogotamili recounted that fate was previously made known to him, but he chose to ignore it, and as such had paid a costly price for ignoring the prediction. In 1931, Marcel Griol was on an ethnographical expedition in West Africa. He had heard of Ogotamili. He had heard of his name and reputation as a famous diviner and a man of outstanding wisdom in the region. As such, Grioli tried to get an interview with him, sending messengers to search for him. When Ogotamili finally agreed to interview, Griol left for the Dogon region of Mali in 1933. For 33 days, Ogotamili divulged to Griol, the Frenchman, the Dogon's belief system. Those conversations with Ogotamili resulted in Griol's most famous work, a diary of religious instructions by the high priest titled Conversations with Ogotamili. You are now in tune. An introduction to the Dogon religious ideas. Originally published in the year 1948, Griol's work has been criticized by scholars over the years as being too idealistic at the expense of historical dynamism. In anthropology, Ogotamili has become a well-known name to the extent that it epitomizes the informant, the person who describes phenomena and traits of his or her own culture, making them understandable to the researcher. You are now in tune on the one, the force itself at this time. We call it the Holy Master Blaster Jamin. I am the Rastafari, Ital Iman. We ask you to study this discourse and overstand. As Bob Marley says, there's been a lot of mix-up in the mixed up, and James Brown, people talking loud, saying nothing, and it is now time to come together on a consensus. We ask you to order the Holy Book of Wonder and understand this consensus. This information that we have given to you today is the epitome of that consensus. So we have everyone doing their own thing. Only thing that should be personal is your own self-control, practicing the arts, the inner arts of the Orient, such as yoga, meditation, and these type things. But all other things should be one love, one aim, one God, one destiny. And the Rastafari, through your brother Ital Iman, has that information that is very vital. As we say, like the food, Ital, natural food, Ital is vital. It's a fact that such as 2 plus 2 is 4. It cannot be refuted. We see the mass killings each day. Things are amplifying. The war, the pandemic is still going on. Earthquakes in diverse places, global warming is going down. We stand upon the verge of getting it on. So we ask all ye upful ones, come forth. You are now in tune. Yes, I am.
for some reason, if you're this color, that's what is supposed to be your story, regardless of whether you was born here or not. And that is a problem, because what that does is it gives us a false sense of inferiority, and it gives another people a false sense of superiority. When these people that they talk about who are Native Americans and Grand Chieftains today, talking about the ones that's opening the casinos and all this other stuff, they are all descendants of people from Tartary. And how can we prove this? This is because way back in the days, there was an empire in ancient China called the Xiang Dynasty. And the Xiang decided, under a man named Hu Xian, another Moor, decided to come over here and find their cousins, who they referred to as the Western Ixi, or Ixet, or Yi. And so when they came here, they found an Olmecs here that was already here from time immemorial. Olmecs here that was already here from time immemorial. Olmecs here that was already here from time immemorial.
Yesterday was about the culture of the Olmecs actually preceding the Mayas. Could you explain that?
Sure. They even are called pre-Maya. Olmecs, some of their cities found in La Venta, Veracruz, Mexico. Some of them probably here on the Pacific coast of Guatemala. And actually, Mayan civilization, as I said, is a sort of a cultural unification. Even some cultures came from the other side of the ocean. Some cultures were here already, like the Olmecs. Even some cultures came from the other side of the ocean. Some cultures were here already, like the Olmecs. Even some cultures came from the other side of the ocean. Some cultures were here already, like the Olmecs. And they are considered probably the roots of the Africans because of the negroid features on their big heads that were left around. And actually in the Pacific coast of Guatemala, we have a city known as Abactacalic or Tacalicabaj, and actually it's sort of the link between the Mayas and the Olmecs. The Mayan civilization is sort of a overlapping of cultures. We're going to talk something about it here, especially of the Teotihuacans. It's a good example of it.
And they both merged their culture. When that culture merged together, they became one people. And then out of that people, we get the people today we call the Hopi, the Anasazi, the so-called Pueblo cultures, and all of that, right? It wasn't until maybe 16,000 years later, when the Hindus was exiled from India by the Sindhi Moors, or the Moors from Old Bombay and all of that, kicked them out. After the Hindu invasions, they all was brought over in boats and brought over here. When they came here, they then mixed with the so-called Autochthon or Aboriginal people who were already here, and then those Aboriginal people allowed them to stay in a certain area, and they adopted them into certain aspects of the culture. This is where you get people called the Mixtecs and the Zapotecs and the Toltecs and these type of people. They were all descended from the Olmecs. Now the Olmec people, the original constituency, started to move further up. They started to move further up from La Venta, Palenque, Chichen Itza, and move further up into what we would now call the Midwestern United States, and then further, and then after a certain amount of time, they dwelled there and then started to disperse into sub-tribes and nations. Some of those sub-tribes and nations, one of the biggest one was called the Yamasee. I don't know if any people saw the movie Apocalypto, but in that movie there was a blue dye that they were painting the people who were going to be sacrificed in. That blue dye actually comes from red clay that's found in Georgia, the red clay in Georgia. And it was an old custom that the queens would ingest some of the red clay in Georgia because it would help with the magical properties that they were trying to pass on to the babies. And a lot of Autochthon people still do that to this day. So what happened was the Yamasee Nation basically... What had happened was the Yamasee Nation established themselves in what we call Georgia and all that. And then one of the sub... And then one of the... I'm sorry.
And one of the sub...
And then one of the sub-nations called the Southern Cree and then the Northern Creek decided to go against and fight the Yamasee. There was a big war between that, and then the Yamasee basically lost the war, and their women were then brought in as squaws, meaning captured queens, to populate with the Cree, the Northern Cree, and the Southern Creek. And once they had those babies, that became another nation now. That nation was then known as the Seminole. And then the Seminole were then given land back down in what we right here call Andalusia.
When some cultures came from the other side of the ocean, some cultures were here already, like the Olmecs. When some cultures came from the other side of the ocean, some cultures were here already, like the Olmecs. When some cultures came from the other side of the ocean, some cultures were here already, like the Olmecs.